So, molecular geometry. And up here in the picture showing you a couple different versions of, we call this the ball and stick model, the 3D model. You saw it also on your PhET simulation. And at any time when you need to check yourself, you can go to the side where it is not the real molecules, and you can look at the, and build it yourself and see and check yourself if you're doing it correctly. But we're only doing some of the shapes. We're not doing all of the shapes. There's about 5 or 6 shapes we're not going to look at or talk about that you would, look at if you were taking AP. Like T-shaped on the end there, we're not going to get to the T-shapes. Those are part of the expanded octet molecules, but we're only going to go so far here. Let's take a look, though. Why structure matters. It's important, of course, developing new drugs, new products, because they have to be able to react correctly and do what they're therapeutically what they need to do for the drug part. Also, understanding how they bond in situ cell replication, DNA replication, cell repair, tissue repair, antibiotics, interacting, all of these things. Lots of them revolve around, of course, the process of reaction, but that also takes into consideration the shape and then the reactivity, and a lot of the reactivity is driven by its shape. All right, so before we get in depth with the molecular stuff, let's recall what the structure of ionic compounds are. They are built-in lattice structures, repeating units of positives and negatives. In this particular example, the lattice structure for sodium chloride, but that's a 1-to-1, 1 positive, 1 negative, so it alternates and it looks sort of like a cube lattice structure here. But other ionic compounds will follow other geometric patterns because their ratios aren't necessarily always going to be 1-to-1. So different lattice is built based off of the ratios, but it's sort of like this. It ends up building into a big, huge crystal, repeating pattern. That's why we always look at the lowest ratio and look at the formula units for ionic compounds, because they just grow and form crystals. Molecules, though, are individual. Individual molecules are going to form crystalline stuff like that. Before we look at the shapes themselves, let's understand why shapes appear. That's because of the valence shell electron pair repulsion theory, or the VSEPR theory. The first part, of course, is that we understand electrons are negatively charged particles. So what do electrons do to other electrons? Of course, they're going to repel, because like charges are going to repel. So they're going to space themselves as far away from each other as possible. The bonded electrons versus the lone pair electrons are going to spread out. Now, what you're going to see here, of course, those are the shared electron pairs, or the bonded pairs between the two atoms. Then we also have the lone pairs. Of course, the one that looks like the cloud with the 2 dots that you saw in your model. The lone pairs actually take up more space and are slightly larger and space themselves out a little bit more than the actual shared electrons. So these are going to create these geometric shapes when we're talking about basic small molecules. And some of these molecules will build into much bigger, longer chains and molecules, but we're going to look at the basic unit of structure here. Like this one is one of the pyramidal ones. It looks like a little mini pyramid. You have the lone pair on top, taking up a lot of space, pushing the other 3 atoms downward, so it forms kind of the little mini pyramid. Now, representing 3D, obviously that's 3D, and just do the best that you can. Okay, do the best that you can. I'm going to show you, I'm artistically challenged too, and I will try to show the 3D arrangements as well. There are a few that are flat and easy to draw, and then there's a couple that are 3D and a little bit harder. So we use the wedge coming forward. So it's basically like you're drawing a little triangle and you're coloring it in. This would be the wedge. The dashes are the harder one for me because you have to start out really small dashes and then they get longer and bigger. until you get sort of a triangle deal on your dashes there. The dashes are the ones that are supposed to be pointing backwards. The wedges point forward, so they're trying to give you a 3D appearance. Now, why are we bothering to show you this? Is because a lot of times on like SOL or on the internet, they have them drawn with these types of things, and it looks, you don't understand what it looks like. It's because they're trying to represent the 3D arrangement of the atoms. All right, before we can get to the shapes, we need to talk about the hybrid orbitals that form around the central atom. Hybrid orbitals are formed in covalently bonded atoms. They have shapes and orientations that are different from those of the atomic orbitals in the isolated atoms. You remember back a couple of units to Unit 4, where we're talking about the orbitals, the electron configurations, the s, the p's, the d's, the f's. They all had their shapes around their atoms. Well, when they are bonding with another one, their orbitals end up hybridizing and merging to a lower energy state. Of course, that's part of it so that it's more stable. Set of hybrid orbitals is generated by combining atomic orbitals, the s, p's, and d's, depending on how many you need to combine and merge. The orbitals in the set hybrids are equivalent in shape and energy. So they will be different than the S and P shapes, the spherical and the dumbbell, even the D ones that look like the flower or bunch of balloon kind of ones. These ones will merge and they will form equal energy, equal shaped orbitals. And to figure out how many orbitals have to merge, you just count the number of lone pairs and the number of bonded atoms around the central atom and determine how many orbitals are going to merge to form the hybrid. So we're going to look at a few examples of how to figure out the hybridization. Looking at this example, the beryllium dichloride here, or the beryllium chloride, I guess you could call it either one. You have two bonded atoms and no lone pairs around that central atom, and we're really focusing on the central atom here. So the beryllium itself has two things bonded, but it doesn't have any lone pairs. So what's going to happen here to form the hybrids? One S and one P will combine to form two sp hybrids. So what does that mean? Well, we use the blue plus red make purple idea. So you have your blue S-shaped spherical one, your red dumbbell-shaped P one. They are going to combine and merge, forming the two purple ones that have like one large lobe and one small lobe. So the two orbitals combine to form two orbitals, but now they are of a different shape. So the blue plus red make purple, purple being the new shape. Looking at this example here, which is formaldehyde. So, once again, we focus on the central atom. You have the carbon in the center. You have two H's attached and one oxygen attached. So 3 atoms attached, no lone pairs. Counting that means 3 orbitals. There's 3 things around the central atom. 3 orbitals are going to have to merge. And of course, the first one to merge is S. It's the lowest energy one, and then 2 P's will merge in, and you get sp2 hybrid orbitals. And since you have 1 S and 2 P's, that means a total of 3 hybrids. Back to the blue and red make purple. But now you have 1 blue, 2 reds, and you have 3 purples that are of different shape. They are of a little bit lower energy than the original 3 together. So combining and merging, these ones go around the central atom, as you can see, focusing on this flat triangle over here to the right. That's showing you how they would branch out of the central atom. Let's look at this example here, where we have ammonia, NH3. Now, around the central atom, we have 3 bonded, 1 lone pair. 4 things total, though. So that means how many orbitals have to merge? 4 are going to have to merge. That's 1 S and 3 P's. there's only three P's to begin with, so now we have the 1s and 3 P's, combining to form 4 sp3 hybrids. Now this diagram I really like because it shows how it brings down the energy a little bit when it merges into the hybrid. You have your S, you have your P's here. The P's are higher, the S is a little bit lower, but putting these two together, combine to make, these are all the sp3s. And the combined is a little bit lower than those P's would have been by themselves. So it does bring down the energy a little bit of the orbitals by merging and combining to form the hybrid. Back to the blue plus red makes purple again. We have 1 blue and the 3 reds combined to make the 4 purples that go around the central atom. As indicated here, the central atom, of course, would be in the middle with its 4 hybrid orbitals coming out to bond with the atoms on the outside. Last but not least, we have to look at an expanded octet one, PF5. So here, 5 atoms attached. So we have 5 bonded no lone pairs. We have 1 S, 3 P's, and now 1 D that has to merge in. So remember, we have 1 S orbital, 3 P orbitals, and then we have 5 D's. Well, in order to make this one work, 1 of the S's with the 3 P's, then you have to add in a D to make the merge happen. And now you're going to have 5 sp3d hybrids. So the picture over here is showing you that here is your S, this time it's red. You have your 3 P's in the blue, the X, Y, and Z plane, the dumbbells, and then you have the 1 lone D here, the one that looks like the donut. They all merge together to form 5 around the central atom there. sp3d hybrids. So hybridization, identifying, it's very easy, just count and then just, merge them together. Because now we're going to look at the 3D diagrams or the ball and stick models. And we are going to start looking at examples and bond angles. So, for linear, we already kind of discussed in the little pre-lab exploring thing, the simulation. If you only have 2 atoms like A and B together, it can only form a straight line. There is no central atom on it, but they combine there like HCl. Now, the other version, which you also did see because you looked at carbon dioxide in your model, which would be the AB2 generic form, there weren't any lone pairs around the central atom. When there's 2 things attached with no lone pairs, it's always going to be linear. So looking here, you have 2 ball and stick models. You have the one that only has 2 atoms, which would be the one on the left. The one on the right is showing that you have the 3 atoms, but they are in a straight line. All right, let's talk hybridization here. Especially, let's look at the one with the central atom here. How many things around the central atom? 2. So how many orbitals merge? 2. So that's an S and a... So our hybrids are going to be SP. Now, hopefully we can interpret this from math, but what is always the angle of a straight line? So that's an easy one to remember. This angle between the outside ligand atoms is 180 degrees. So the bond angle linear, of course, is 180. Now, 2 types of bits. Let's look at the first one here. Both are AB2, 2 things attached, but the first one only has 1 lone pair. The second one has 2 lone pairs. So we're going to look at 2 different examples here. Looking at the one that has 1 lone pair there. How many things around that central atom? 3. So what is going to be the hybridization there?
SP2.
SP2, good. Yes, so 1s, 2p's, sp2 is going to be the hybridization for this type of vect. Now, everybody's familiar with like the flat triangle idea? Okay, looking here. What are the angles around, say, a flat triangle like that?
45.
What's a full circle?
120.
So 360, and we have it in thirds here, right? 1/3 each. So it should be 120, right? So normally this would be 120, right? But because that lone pair takes up a little bit more space, this angle between these two are slightly lower than 120. Some of them are like 119, some of them are 115, but they are slightly lower than 120 because that lone pair on the top is taking up more space. It pushes the other two atoms closer. So just slightly less than 120 there. Now let's look at the other vent. The one that you're very familiar with because water is an example where you have the two lone pairs. We also have the sulfur dibromide there. All right, so here the green parts are simulating lone pairs. Okay, so these are your lone pairs here. Now, in a ball and stick model, you don't always have to draw the lone pairs. You can just draw the atoms, the balls, and the sticks. You can include the lone pairs if you like to. I don't really care. So, hybridization, though. How many things around that central atom? 4. Yes, 2 lone pairs, 2 bonded atoms. So, what's our hybrid orbital have to be? sp. Now remember, there's only one s orbital to combine. There's 3 in the p, so that's why we would go sp3. However, because there's 2 lone pairs on the top, guess what? They take up more space. So what happens here to the angle between these 2 atoms? Is it going to be slightly less than 120? No, it's going to be even smaller. And it's a weird random one, so I'm just going to tell you what it is. I won't make you guess. It's 104.5. 104.5. So those 2 lone pairs push them a little bit closer together. So far, so good. Let's look at, we have our AB3s. Both have 3 things attached. One has lone pairs, the other one does not. Let's look at the one that does not first. The trigonal planar. It's a flat triangle, basically. Just spacing out around that central atom. So it's pretty obvious what those angles are going to be. A circle is 360. We've got 3 of them. They're all going to be what? 120. All right. How many things around that central atom there? 3. So how many orbitals combined for the hybridization? So this is an sp2. Good. sp2. Almost done. We're getting there. The trigonal pyramidal. That was sort of like our ammonia example. It does have a lone pair. It does have 3 bonded atoms. Remember the green up here? That's representing the lone pairs. I'll make it bigger and with the dots like the one in the model had. So 3 bonded atoms, 1 lone pair means how many things around that central atom? 4. So what's our hybrid look like here? sp3. Good. And that lone pair pushes those 3 downward. So that angle is going to be less than 120. And it is also a random number. I'm not going to make you try to guess it. It is 107 degrees. That is between these around here at the bottom, the bonded atoms, those angles are about 107 degrees. So some of the angles are very easy to remember because it's like based off of math. The other ones you just have to memorize. Almost done. So if you need to go back and look, I put the answers here for you. Tetrahedral. One central atom, 4 ligands attached to the central atom. No lone pairs. This is where the 3D stuff comes in. Trying to make it look like it's coming out of the paper. How many things around that central atom? 4. So what is our hybridization here? sp3, yes. Now, yeah, instead of a lone pair on the top, we have a bonded atom on the top, so it's not taking up as much space. So would you say this angle should be larger or less than the 107? Should be slightly larger. So I'm glad that you could predict that. I'm not going to ask you to predict the number because it is kind of random. It's 109.5. And that is the angle around all of them. Like this is 109.5, that's 109.5, that's 109.5. All of them 109.5. Only 2 more to do and then you can do some practice. The trigonal bipyramidals. No lone pairs, 5 atoms attached. Now this one's an interesting one. What it really is, it's like a straight line right here, but then it's sort of like a flat triangle in the middle. Like a rotating flat triangle in the middle with a straight line. So it has interesting angles on it because of that. But what would our hybridization be with 5 things around the central atom? sp3d, there you go. Now the triangle angles, what do we know about them? What should they be? These ones are 120s, right? So we have angles that are 120. But what kind of angle is this one? That's a right angle, so that's a 90. So in bipyramidals, you're going to have 90 degrees and 120 in the middle triangle part. So you have both angles occurring in this particular molecule, 120 and 90. Now octahedral is the easiest on the angles. So let's take a look at it here. It's like a square around the middle. So this is like a flat square here, right? And then that's like a straight line going up and down this way. So a square with a straight line. 6 things around the central atom. So how many orbitals merge now? 6. So we need what? 1s. We need 3 p's and 2 d's now to merge all together to form sp3d2 hybrids. And it should be pretty obvious, but what are all the angles on this thing? They're all 90s, yeah. So that one's pretty easy to tell. So what I'd like you to have out at this point is one that's the guided practice. We can start there and do some of those. That's the landscape sheet. We're going to come back and work a couple of those. I'll let you try some, and then we'll check our answers. Looking here at our first example, carbon tetrachloride. Okay, we're going to count electrons. 4 from the carbon plus 4 times 7 from the chlorines. That gives us all of what? 32 to work with, right? What goes in the center? Carbon, good. Attach the ligands. Our chlorines here. All right, that's a total of 8 that I've used, so now I'm down to 24. Now, what's the next step in drawing this abstract? Lone pairs around the ligands. Let's satisfy the ligands. That's 6 per chlorine, so that's a total of 24. And now we have run out of electrons.
All gone.
All right, so is the carbon satisfied? Does it have 8?
Yes.
All the chlorines have 8?
Yes.
Good. Now, we have to kind of look here, figure out what do we have? We have carbon with 4 chlorines. Are there any lone pairs on the central atom? No. So which shape is this one going to be? This one's going to be tetrahedral. So I would try to identify the shape first and then draw the ball and stick model. Now, for tetrahedrals, you should, of course, make your central atom. Of course, one would go up. This one is usually the one that I keep in mind with the paper. This one I pull forward. Hold on. Doing the wedgie, and then the dashes. Of course, this will help make it look more 3D. What is it
necessary? I do not get it.
That's the question, is it necessary?
All right, so for the tetrahedral here, you need to draw it as it's supposed to appear in a 3-dimensional fashion. Now, if you draw it though, like this, I will accept it. 1 up and 3 down, like that. That will also be accepted on, like, say, a test or quiz. However, just to show you, I'll pass around the actual 3D model so you can see it. This is a tetrahedral, and it is 3-dimensional. It's like a mini pyramid that flips. So take a look at that. Now, what is the hybridization here?
It is SP.
It is sp3 because we have 4 bonded atoms, 4 things around the central atom, so 4 orbitals merge. And what is the bond angle for a tetrahedral? 109.5 degrees. Very good. So, that's what we're looking at here. Did everybody kind of get the idea of the drawing there? Let's do one more here. Nitrogen triiodide. We have 5 from the nitrogen, plus 3 times 7. That's what, 26 to work with? All right, nitrogen goes in the center. Attach the ligands. Our iodines are our ligands. Now, I've used 6, I'm down to 20. Satisfy the octets of the ligands by putting lone pairs in. Now I'm down to 2. I've used 18 of the 20. Now, when you have extra, where do you put it? Central atom. And that satisfies the octet of the nitrogen as well. Now, looking here, I have 3 bonded atoms and 1 lone pair. Which shape does that go with? The T pyramidal. You can write out trigonal every time, or you can put T. I know what you mean. And sometimes on the internet, if you Google these, it'll say triangular pyramidal or trigonal pyramidal. Both mean the same thing. Now, when drawing this one, I will try to draw the 3D version first and then show you what I will accept on a quiz. So here, our nitrogen. So, sort of looks like a mini pyramid. If you want to put the lone pair on top, you're welcome to do that. That's fine. If you don't want to do the wedgies and lines, if you represent the diagram like this, that would be acceptable because you're showing me it's like a pyramid. Now, what is the hybridization for this one? sp3, good. We have 3 bonded, 1 lone pair, 4 things. So 4 orbitals merge. And what's the bond angle here? 107, good. So keep that in mind as you're looking through here to practice. Basically, the quiz is going to look like that. It's going to be 2 rows, 2 different compounds. To draw the Lewis dot structure, the ball and stick model, the shape, hybridization, and bonding angles. Any questions?